Hey, it's Mark's Watch with your latest episode of So Long Tobacco Road. This is probably not going to be the best one for the ACC. ACC SEC Challenge wrapped up last night. The ACC was 2-14. You heard that correctly. 2-14. And a lot of the questions are, where did this go wrong? And I will tell you, we're going to start out with um, how these conferences are recruiting stylistically. And with the ACC, and obviously we're going to start with the ACC as I'm pulling up some of these scores. Um, let's start off by going back to, let's see, that's Wednesday night. Let's go back to Tuesday night before we deal with Wednesday. Um, Clemson got the lone ACC win with a really good win over Kentucky. Clemson was hosting. I think that did help them a lot. But the ACC with the big, not only the losses, the big losses. Tennessee over Syracuse 96-70. Now, this is a bad matchup. It's a bad matchup. Syracuse is nowhere close to where Tennessee is. But again, a 26-point loss can't be a 26-point loss. Oklahoma beats Georgia Tech 76-61. Again, Oklahoma is a ranked opponent. Georgia Tech is still building. Let's just be honest. They are still building. So they're not mature enough in their processes and their recruiting yet to compete in a game like this. And the two of the things that were similar. Well, one of the things that was similar between Tennessee and Oklahoma's win. Look at the second halves. In Tennessee Syracuse, in the second half, Tennessee outscored Syracuse 51-35. That's after outscoring them by 10 in the first half. You go to Oklahoma Georgia Tech. Oklahoma was trailing by 4 at halftime. They outscored Georgia Tech 46-27 in the second half. We'll scroll down. Texas A&M 57-44 over Wake Forest. Wake Forest only scored 18 points in the second half and was outscored by 10. And stylistically, you would have thought that Wake Forest, even though they're on the road, would be able to have more success, especially offensively, than what they had. Ole Miss, who is another ranked team in the SEC, they won by 23 at Louisville. Louisville was coming off feeling good for itself with some of the wins that they had, and they got blown to pieces. Again, being outscored by 14 in the second half. Arkansas outscores Miami by 11 in the second half, and that's 76-73 win for the SEC, even though it was probably closer than a lot of people thought it would be, especially how Miami had been playing. I think a lot of this was Arkansas will probably win this easily, and they found themselves down at halftime, and they righted the ship in the second half. Plus, I don't think that Arkansas is well coached. Yes, I said that. And then we'll just run down here. Georgia beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame certainly misses Marcus Burton. Missouri beats Cal by 5. South Carolina beat a bad BC team up at BC by 22. Paris is doing a great job at South Carolina, by the way. SMU wasn't part of the challenge. LSU beat Florida State. I don't think anyone was shocked by that. And Stanford wasn't part of the challenge. So after that bad first night, some heavyweights in the second night. Now, I had picked Duke to beat Auburn. I thought the home court advantage and this being Auburn's, I think, first true road game laid perfectly for Duke to pull the upset off. And Duke did pull off the upset 84-78, even though I will say this. There were stretches in the second half where, oh my gosh, Auburn showed you why they were the better team. Duke got the plays when they needed to get the plays, and they got off to a good start, and leading halftime by 7 points, and that helped. Carolina in a game that I felt like they would lose, because this is just the type of opponent, how they are constructed, that gives Hubert problems. And they lost 94-79. Yes, I thought UVA would lose by 20 to Florida. Florida won by 18. The game that really, really shocked me, and I thought it was telling of where the ACC was Mississippi State beating Pitt 90-57. That's the game the ACC's got to have on the road. And if they do lose it, it cannot be 90-57. And then to finish up, Texas gets a big stop down the road and then a big shot. They beat NC State 63-59 in Raleigh. And last but not least, and not shocking, Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech down in Blacksburg by 16. For those wondering, the Tyler Nickel revenge game. Tyler Nickel was 2 for 7 for 6 points in the game. So how did this happen? How does this happen? And it's very simple. It's recruiting. What you're seeing in the SEC is the SEC, this is not all SEC teams, but when you look at the Alabamas, the Floridas, somewhat Auburn, you kind of see where Mississippi State's going, sort of Ole Miss. When you start looking at what they're recruiting, what are they recruiting? Skilled, long, athletic. Skilled, long, athletic. Not just long, not just athletic. Skilled, long, athletic. What is the ACC recruiting? You got it. There are exceptions. You can say an exception is Duke. Duke has tried to not necessarily get long, I would say long enough, not necessarily athletic, I would say athletic enough. But their guys don't stay. And they know when they recruit them that they're not staying. Now you had guys like Proctor and those guys stay, but those guys aren't the guys that fall into that category either. But outside of that, even Carolina. When I was growing up, it was hard to be more athletic than Carolina. Under Dean Smith, when I was a kid, those late 70s, early 80s, going into the mid 80s, and even getting to the 90s where they got guys like Vince Carter, it was hard to out-athletic the skill set of North Carolina's athletes. Well, they don't recruit that way. First of all, they didn't really recruit that way under Roy. Roy recruited like he was still in the Big 8 at Kansas. And yes, he had success. How can you not say he had success? He won 3 national championships. That's success. But I will tell you this, for Virginia, for North Carolina, and those guys, times have changed. These skilled, athletic wings and the younger coaches coaching more of a philosophy that looks more like pro basketball, not just the NBA, but looks more like pro basketball, FIBA, NBA. They're conceptually looking at the numbers that way and coaching to that with the skilled athletes that are long that they have. And it is hard for a conference like the ACC, who is still recruiting from a previous generation for the most part. It's hard for them to deal with it. It's hard for them to win this. I didn't think it was going to be 2-14, but I certainly did not think the ACC was going to win this challenge against the SEC. The SEC is what the future of college basketball looks like. Just like the SEC is the future of what college football looks like. It's the present and the future of college football. But that's what college basketball looks like. And when you see the next generation of coaches come in, they're going to coach more like the SEC than they are the ACC and the Big Ten. Those days, you don't ever want to say, those days are over, because I think that's too much, because everyone's always going to have their own philosophies. But the next generation of coaches, this is what basketball looks like to them. It doesn't look like your college basketball, and it's not going to. And, that's going to be something that not only the ACC, but some people who want college basketball to look a certain way, they better start getting used to that. Because as we get further along, your team's going to look more like Florida and Alabama and somewhat Auburn than they are going to look like Virginia, than they are going to look like Wake. And even with this iteration of North Carolina, then they are going to look like North Carolina. North Carolina has brought in some athletic kids. The Jackson kid and the Powell kid are both athletic, but they're also freshmen. They're also freshmen. The other guys who were brought in, they were brought in around two bigs, which I know if Hubert had his druthers and if they had had more success in the transfer portal, they would have two bigs. But they don't. They struck out in the transfer portal, and now they're out of bigs, and it shows. You're looking at a coach who's trying to change stuff midstream that has not fit his philosophy, not only as a head coach, but a philosophy where he was an assistant coach on his predecessor's bench. And it's been something else. So for North Carolina and the Louisvilles and the NC States and those guys, even though I think Louisville has a coach that will, if he's smart, he'll make the adjustment at Louisville in Pat Kelsey, because he's going to have access to some of those long athletic players that you'd like to have. But I'm disappointed in Georgia Tech, who has long athletic players. They're just not skilled. So the skill portion is so important, because it's skilled long athletics, not just long and athletic. Okay, this is why you say all the time when Duke started losing after Leitner and all those guys, after that run with Leitner and all those guys, it's like, Duke, when they were winning, and it used to make some people so happy. Duke would be all these athletic teams. Oh, they're smarter. Oh, they're high IQ. This because they're smarter. And what ended up happening was that wasn't the case. What basketball started changing into were basketball players who were athletic, and no longer athletic players who were playing basketball. Huge difference. And now we've gotten to the long, skilled athletic players, which isn't the same of just being long and athletic, right? And so what is killing the ACC, and what I hope every coach in the ACC, young and old, starts to accept is, guys, you got to start looking at a different brand of kid to recruit. And because this isn't going to get it done, because you look bad in a challenge and you could end up facing one of these type teams in the NCAA tournament. So 2-14 says a lot, and it says a lot about the conference, not about an individual team, not about an individual coach. It says a lot about the conference. Thank you for joining us for the latest episode of So Long Tobacco Road. This is Marcus Washington from MTC